Welcome back, everyone. The House Ethics Committee voted in favor, as you know, of censuring Congressman Charlie Rangel. 9-1 was the vote for ethics violations. It's the most severe punishment short of expulsion. Here's what Congressman Rangel had to say before the decision.
It would really help, and I don't think it's out of line, if the committee didn't say it before, that you could put in that report, no matter what you agree the sanction should be, that your member was not corrupt and did not seek and did not gain anything personally for the bad conduct that I've had.
So was justice served? Joining me on our political panel this morning in the Ice Palace is Brad O'Leary, publisher of O'Leary Report and author of America's War on Christianity; Jami Floyd, attorney and legal analyst; and Elise Jordan, former speechwriter for Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. Good morning, panel, and thank you so much for obliging us to come out to the Ice Palace.
Good morning.
Thanks for welcoming.
So, Elise, we just heard Congressman Rangel. The buzzword to me was, please don't call me corrupt, but instead they said censure. Right or wrong?
I think it's right. I think it's a positive move. Members of Congress should be held to an even higher standard than ordinary citizens. And what kind of message does it send if he doesn't have to be held accountable?
Yeah, but Jami, if the regular Joe on the street had faced these charges, you're a lawyer, they might have been locked up. Censure, I looked it up. It just means kind of getting a little bit in trouble, like a timeout.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me because, of course, I am born and raised here in New York, grew up with Charlie Rangel. The man's 80 years old. I'm a Democrat, and so is he. But I got to say, I agree with Elise on holding our representatives to a higher standard. Was this high enough? I don't know. It breaks my heart. 20 terms of service, and this is how it ends for Charlie Rangel. Legacy. This may be his legacy. I don't know if this was enough, but in the end, this is what we'll remember of Charles Rangel.
But Brad, many Americans are saying he did it to himself.
Well, he did. He's a war hero. He wrote a wonderful book about his experiences in America. He should have quit, and he should have paid his taxes. And the evidence against him is clear. He should have been expelled. And what kind of message do we send to the many employees of the federal government who haven't paid their taxes and don't intend to?
Jami, would you feel differently if he were a Republican?
No. I think what this raises, though, and your question really goes right to this: can the body police itself? Should there have been, and should we have going forward, independent assessment of congressmen on the right or left, Republicans or Democrats, when they get into trouble? Can they really make a fair assessment of one of their own? This was a bipartisan panel.
Which I think was one of the first things in recent time that showed that both sides came to an agreement on something. But Elise, is it also a support for term limits?
I think that a sense of entitlement does come with public service for that long. And I'm not necessarily in support of term limits, but 40 years, and I think that when you're a career politician like that, you're not really living the life of a normal citizen.
All right. Well, panel, stick around, if you will, in our Ice Palace, because we want to talk about this: a success or a setback. Two sides on how the first civilian terror trial will shape the decision to prosecute more terror suspects in civilian courts. We're chatting out here, Brian, with the panel. It was supposed to be a dry run for trying terrorists in the U.S., but now that ex-Gitmo detainee Ahmed Gilani has been cleared on all but one charge by a civilian jury, many are calling it a huge mistake. So what does the verdict mean for future terror trials? We're back with our political panel. All right, Brad, I'm going to let you take a crack at this one first.
Well, I think what we see here is a Muslim who doesn't want to have America have Judeo-Christian law being freed because of Judeo-Christian law. And it's obvious a mistake that we should not be trying people, giving people the same rights that we give all our other citizens who have killed people, and he's killed 200 Americans.
Jami, you're an attorney.
Let me make sure I understand what you're saying. We should not give them the same rights that we give others.
Yes,
that's
what I'm saying.
I have to say I disagree with that. I think this was not a mistake. This was a victory for our judicial system. This was a vindication of the Department of Justice.
How?
Of the Obama administration.
Of 284 charges.
He gets out in 20 years.
People were saying that there would be violence here in New York, that the system would collapse, that the federal civilian system could not handle it. There was no violence. We've had terror trials here in New York before. We can handle it. and the system functioned. We have a constitution in this country that permits us to have these trials and, in fact, requires that we give the rights and due process to people like Galani.
I want to listen to Attorney General Eric Holder, and then I want to ask you, what the heck would have happened if they didn't convict him on just this one charge? What would America have done with him then? Let's listen to the Attorney General.
At the conclusion of the Galani case, I'll ask you to ask me that question again. And I will give you the same answer, which is that Article III courts are fully capable of handling these matters.
Fully capable, Jamie. So, hypothetically, let's say he doesn't get convicted of anything. Then the civilian court worked?
Well, if he doesn't get convicted of anything, we have to take a look at what's happened to the other detainees that have been repatriated to their countries of origin. So people aren't just set free in the United States, which is the misinformation that's given to the American public, given by opponents of civilian trials. Remember Moussaoui, who was tried also in the United States and is sitting in prison where he belongs.
But in military tribunals, Elise, all that evidence that was not allowed in the civilian court would have been allowed.
Correct.
I don't even think it's so much about, the evidence per se, the evidence that supposedly would have allowed this key witness to participate. It's the fact, is this a criminal? Are we treating him like a common criminal, or is he an enemy combatant? I certainly think he's an enemy combatant and doesn't deserve the same to be tried in a court in New York.
This is what the State Department said after the one lone conviction for a 20-year sentence. A jury of 12 Americans convicted Ahmed Galani of a terrorist conspiracy. Well, no, that's not what it was. Yeah. A miscarriage of justice? No, it's called the rule of law.
It's about whether or not evidence that is received through torture can be admitted in a court of law, and whether or not that evidence is valid evidence. If you torture someone, can you rely on that evidence in court? Is it valid? Is what that witness told you truthful?
There was another witness who was not
brought him into this country. We gave him justice that he wouldn't have had if he'd have been kept out of the country. Absolutely not.
That's a fair point.
This is a murder.
I mean, I think there's a fair argument that there could be some kind of hybrid national security court. This has been proposed by several legal scholars that could have, the military tribunal aspect, but also civilian judicial appointees also. And I think that would
not
be
the military commission system that we have.
No doubt there's a huge question mark as to how the future terror trials will go, and we will have to stay tuned for that. Panel, thank you so much for your thoughts
in the Ice Palace.
Yes, exactly.